All right, so thanks everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to see you all again. Today we have with us Brett Johnson, who is a senior manager in our forensic accounting department. I'm going to hand it over to him and then let him share with us more about forensic accounting. So take it away, Brett.
Hey everybody, how's it going? You can nod if it's going good or just shake your head if things are horrible right now. I'm gonna drink my coffee, so I apologize if you hear sipping or see myself spill or whatever it is. I still have my morning voice, I'm still catching up, so I apologize. But I'll give you a little bit of background on myself, and I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna show you a little bit of a PowerPoint. Actually recognize some of you. I know that some of you have probably heard me speak, whether it was in a class that you were in or something else. So some of this might be regurgitated, some of this may not be. And I'm gonna and hopefully you guys can see that. Is that up, Carrie?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So I'll give you a little bit of a background on myself. And first of all, I'm a senior manager in our fraud and forensic advisory department. We've actually changed the name of that department quite a few times. It used to be forensic accounting and investigative services. At one point, we were FraudWise way back in the day, and then we switched to forensic and valuation because we kind of do work with our business valuation department pretty close. And then recently we've kind of changed it as more of a branding item to fraud and forensic accounting or fraud and forensic advisory. So there are aspects and there are services that we have that I can speak on, but I'm not an expert in. Because forensics, although we are somewhat specialized, actually pretty specialized, we have even more specialization within our department, if you can believe it. So there are a few of those that I'll touch on, but again, I may not be able to answer specific questions related to those. But I'll give you background on myself. So I am a townie, meaning that I grew up in Fargo and went to college in Fargo and now live in Fargo. So I went to Fargo South High School. I graduated high school in 2001, if you can believe it. And I went to NDSU and went right into an accounting major. So I knew I wanted to do accounting. I did not want to become a CPA, and I did not want to work for a CPA firm at the time. That was like the last thing on my list. And they did have when I started at NDSU, and some of you may attend NDSU, when I started there, they had a fraud examination minor. So I jumped into that minor right away and took a super senior year of college. So I went 5 years to get my degree in accounting and a minor in fraud examination. And I came out with a job at Eide Bailly. Now I started as an intern with our forensic department back before it was just getting off its feet. We were very small. We had 2 or 3 guys that were kind of doing the forensic thing. My career advisor kind of said, hey, they do have a program if that's what you're interested in. And I knew that's kind of what I wanted to work on and do. So he gave me their number. I called and I said that I would, work for college credit, and they gave me a job as an intern. I don't think we do that now. I think we actually do pay our people. So I did it for free for college credit, basically, and worked for them for 6 months, and then they didn't need me anymore, so I stopped working for them. And then I really wanted to get in, and there wasn't a job available, so I applied to get into Eide Bailly's audit department. I got that job. From what I heard, I barely squeaked in and got hired as an auditor. But before my actual start date, they had an opening for forensics, and they called me, and I was able to jump right into forensics. So I never actually worked a day in our audit department, and I never worked a day in our tax department. So I didn't get here the traditional way. I actually don't recommend the way I got into Eide Bailly. Going through the proper channels and applying the way you should is probably the best way to do it. So I've been with the firm now for 15 years, and I have not left. I actually did transfer to our Oklahoma City office for a 3-year time period when we were trying to get our work out there kind of moving and grooving. We did get a lot of work out of those offices, so we were trying to build that practice. And then once we hired some individuals out there, I was able to come back to Fargo and be close to family. I had young kids at that time, so that worked out well. So a little bit about our department and maybe what credentials I have, because that's kind of a thing that I get asked a lot. So I do have a CPA. I sat for the CPA exam. I got that. That's highly recommended in our field. It's not required. So we don't require people to have a CPA to be in our department. In fact, there's a handful of really, really good investigators that we have that do not have it. In fact, our director of forensic accounting does not have a CPA. I also have as an extension of the CPA, there's a credential called the CFF, which is Certified in Financial Forensics. So I do have that as well. I actually got in the ground floor of that certification right when it came out, like 12 or 13 years ago. And I literally got it by just paying $300. I think they just needed people to like have it so they could start promoting it more. But now there's like a test and all kinds of stuff, and I didn't have to do that. I just had to say that I was a CPA and I had X amount of experience in forensics and pay a fee, and I got the credential. So it worked out well for me, I guess. I'm also a certified fraud examiner now. A CFE, a certified fraud examiner, is what we do require. That's probably the most renowned credential in forensic accounting. However, I would say that it's not that difficult to get. Really, the most difficult part of that is the experience requirement. You need to have 2 years of experience in conducting investigations to qualify and get the credential. The test is fairly simple when you compare it to something like the CPA exam. I would say it's probably a quarter of the difficulty to actually take that. So, but having that is probably what's most recognized in the field. I'd say that much. And then lastly, I have I'm a certified forensic interviewer. So once we get to a certain experience level, usually about 5 years of experience, 4 to 5 years of experience, we like to have our individuals take the CFI exam and study and take that, because we do a lot of interviews with subjects that are suspected of stealing and committing fraud. And if sometimes we just don't have that smoking gun in the documentation that we're reviewing, and sometimes the best way to get that evidence is just to get a confession. So we have people that are trained, myself included, to interview suspects and then also try to get confessions from them if we believe they are the ones that may have committed a crime or a fraud. So CFI is part of that. So those would be my main credentials. It's a lot of credentials. I don't recommend having more than you need. The reason I have a lot is because it looks really good when we testify in court. For instance, if I do interview somebody and I get a confession and then I end up testifying in a case or being deposed by an attorney on the matter, I can at least say that, well, I have a certification in interviewing. I understand the rules that come with that. I know that, I wasn't trying to, this person was not held against their will. I didn't coerce this individual into confessing to me, that type of stuff. So that credential helps in that regard. The other credentials help build just credibility to whatever opinion or whatever conclusion I would have in a report. So, if I do come to some kind of conclusion that money is missing or appears to have been appropriated, having a CPA, a CFF, a CFE credential really does help build that credibility for that case. So that's why I have all those. And they're a pain in the ass to keep up. All the education credits and everything like that, it's the worst. But nonetheless, we have that. So other credentials, I should actually do this so it's better. Other credentials in forensic accounting that I've seen, certified internal auditor. So there's a lot of private companies that will have internal auditors that are also investigators, because really an internal auditor does do a lot of testing for fraud. That's what kind of the whole point, making sure that the books are in order, and then also seeing if there's fraud. So there's a lot of CIAs that are in forensic accounting. Accredited in business valuation. So that's another one that we see. Our valuation department has a lot of individuals with ABV credential. We have people in our department that do economic damage work. So they actually, and they have ABV credentials as well. Doing economic damage work is something I'll kind of dive into a little bit later, but certified forensic financial analyst. I've heard of this. I've known people with it, but I don't see it very often. Certified in risk management assurance, that one's pretty common. And then certified valuation analyst. So there's a few there that are related to more on the valuation side. And again, I'll kind of talk about how that relates to forensics as opposed to the actual valuing of a business. And this is to give you an idea, not just where Eide Bailly offices are, but if you look at the blue states, those are where we are getting clients from a forensic standpoint. So we get clients all over the place. It's kind of fun. And one that's not even pictured here is I actually had to go to Bolivia once for a matter. That was a really cool experience. I think I was the only one that volunteered to go, actually, and when we get that matter. But I thought Bolivia was fun. It was in La Paz. It was like 13,000 feet. It's hard to breathe, but it was really cool. I recommend it if you guys ever have the opportunity. But most of our cases, and I'll kind of show some more where our cases actually come from in terms of numbers, but I would say they mostly land where our Eide Bailly footprint is, most of our cases. However, you can see we do get cases on the East Coast. We do get matters, in India. We do get matters that we're assist with. I've gone to Hawaii before. We've had, I think, 2 or 3 matters in Hawaii. So it's different than the normal, I would say, tax and audit footprint, because we'll kind of go wherever the matters take us. I would say, honestly, I live in Fargo, and I would say right now I have maybe 2 cases that are actually in North Dakota, where the rest of the cases I'm working on currently are in the south or in the western part of the state, or in the United States. This one's kind of hard to read, and I apologize, but this kind of gives an idea of all the different services we offer in forensic accounting. So you can see there's attorney and corporate consulting, and I'm looking under computer forensics right now, and that's one area that we have specific individuals that work computer forensics, and there's a lot of things that fall into computer forensics. Generally speaking, computer forensics is the ability to gather like digital data from hard drives, whether it's a phone, a computer. We can get information out of vehicles. We can get information out of copy machines. We can get information out of, obviously, like USB drives and things like that. Anything that stores data, we can pull that with our software and our hardware and potentially find things that may have been deleted or hidden from other people. So it's kind of interesting. You think of computers and you think of, well, if I put this in the recycle bin and I empty my recycle bin, it's gone. Well, it's not. And we have the ability sometimes to recover that information. And same with cell phones. The part that's we're having and we're getting more work out of on the computer forensic side is really the cloud-based stuff. That really throws a wrench in things because the cloud is what's holding the data, and that can be a server anywhere. That server could be located in another country, and that's where the cloud is. And we sometimes have issues gathering that. But the good part about that is if something shows up on a screen, it's usually cached somewhere in the hard drive, and we're able to pull that, or we may be able to pull it. So that helps as well. But the cloud is one thing that we've been working with and getting more work out of. You can see on the forensic accounting side, claims review. So that has to do with like insurance claims. So we get people trying to claim that something happened to my business. I broke down. We lost money, and we have lost profits, and they're claiming they lost profits of, let's say, $50,000, and the insurance company wants us to look at that and say, is this even accurate? So it's not always fraud related. Sometimes it's just verification for clients so they can pay a claim. Economic damage calculations, that has to do with kind of what I was talking about on the valuation side. So we have people that are ABVs and credited in business valuation, but their whole job, the only thing they do is economic damage calculations. So they create those damages, but for something happening to a company or an individual. So let's say you get injured on the job, or let's say you get in a car accident and you can't work. And let's say you get in a car accident and it's so bad that you can't work for maybe the rest of your life. And you are trying to sue somebody, for an amount, or, that their insurance company can pay, or even maybe they're just them. And you're saying, hey, had you not hit me with your vehicle, I would have made X amount of money over X amount of years. I would have X amount in retirement. And we would actually figure out that calculation. We have people that can figure that stuff out. And that is not limited to only those types of situations. There's literally hundreds and probably thousands of different scenarios of where we have to make a damage calculation. I had one that I actually helped with recently, where it was these people that entered into a partnership. Well, one side thought they were getting into a partnership. The other side didn't actually make them partners in the company. So at the end of like a 3-year, 4-year period, they've kind of then just found out, hey, we're not partners. I thought we were partners splitting this income. And they weren't actually partners. So they wanted us to, hey, what would the calculation, how much would we have been paid if we were partners, because we were under the impression we were. So we actually came up with that calculation for them. So we get very different scenarios where we have to come up with an economic damage. And then also financial exploitation. That's a big one that we do. So if you think of that, think of like elderly. That's a big one. Elderly individuals or people with dementia getting taken advantage of a lot of times. Unfortunately, it's by family members taking their money, becoming that power of attorney, and taking funds from them, stealing. But I would say 90% of what I do is related to employee theft. So we're talking just employees taking funds, taking advantage of the place that they work. That'd be about 90% of what I do specifically. And really, I'm a fact finder. That's probably the easiest way to put it. I don't try to come up with a whole lot of different opinions or calculations that I believe it should be this. It's really of me finding who, what, where, why, where to go, where to come from, and figuring out that information so an attorney or a client can then make decisions on if they want to sue somebody or maybe press charges criminally, that type of thing. So here's just some kind of interesting statistics. So you can see 55% of our work is financial analysis and investigative. So that'd be the total work that we do as a department. 30% is actually fraud prevention. So we actually do consulting to businesses that say, hey, I don't want fraud to happen. can you guys come in and then just tell me how to prevent it? And we'll kind of assess the controls that they have in place, and then we'll provide some recommendations. And then 15% is where something, no one's found anything. I actually have a couple of these right now in the pipeline where, they don't I got one that's actually a city government, and the new city manager, they just found out, had a kind of an interesting past with previous governments that he worked at, and did some kind of shady stuff, and maybe stole some money. So they want us to they put him on administrative leave, and they're like, hey, can you just come in, take a look, and see if there's anything that he did within our government, because we're just don't have that warm fuzzy feeling. So they don't believe anything's happened, but they just want us to come in and just kind of do some fraud detection work just to see. So we get that every now and then. That's about 15% of our work. And then as far as where we get our work, that's another big question we get. Like, how do you get your work? Is it just like people calling in, cold calling, looking at your website? We do get a lot of that. So that'd be like that 10%, that direct client. That'd be about that. Half our work comes from current Eide Bailly clients, or current Eide Bailly partners referring work to us that they get calls on. Because a lot of times people will call an auditor or a tax person and say, hey, we need an audit done. And then the more we talk to them, it's, well, really, you're looking for forensics because you feel someone stole from you. And so that is more of a forensic audit, really, is what they're looking for. And then 30% of our work comes directly from attorneys and paralegals. As far as tools we use, we obviously are a big user of Excel, just like anything else. Altia, Idea, ScanWriter, these are all tools that we use to help read information or PDF files. We can like scan stuff into our software, and it'll spit it out into like a form that we can use. So we could take 10 years of bank statements, send it through ScanWriter, and it'll spit it out in Excel, and we can then actually do some analysis and data analytics on that data. We have a ton of forensic tools and software for the computer forensic side, which I couldn't even tell you how many things we have, but we need so much because phones, for example, change every year, and there's always new hookups and new batteries that are being used, or new tools that you need to use to actually open them. So it's a constantly changing world, and we probably have to spend a lot of money just to stick with it. This is kind of information, or this is kind of interesting information. It's kind of where the industry and kind of entity type of where we get our cases. I think this is 2018 data that I had one of our administrative people kind of put together. You can see that the industry is the number of cases we got that year, and in what industry. And you can see it's all over the board. We work in any industry. We're not specialized in this just one industry. We work in wherever there would be fraud. Individual tax, really what that means is we're probably getting a lot of computer forensic cell phone stuff from individuals that want us to pull data from a cell phone that maybe they can't open anymore, or sometimes it's like their spouse's cell phone and they want us to do some data dumping for them. The services other, that's really attorneys. That just doesn't pop up here in a better industry name. So really, these are just attorneys that are hiring us, which is pretty common. And then you can see the entity types. Usually, it's larger corporations that we're working for, partnerships, governments, that type of thing. And also some case statistics by state, so you can see where the number of cases are, and by state. You can see the majority. So Utah, the reason that's so high is because, again, that's cell phones probably. And then 2, that's where we have a computer forensic lab. That's one of our labs. We have a lab in Oklahoma, Utah, and Minneapolis. We try to spread those out as much as we can. North Dakota and Minnesota, obviously we have huge presence presence is there in forensics and in Eide Bailly in general. So those are where we get a lot of work. Oklahoma, we get a lot of work out of there too. So, but you can see pretty much, you know, any state will get some work out of it in any given year. And then by job type, so you can see in that year, so this is, again, I think it was 2018, 96 cases were forensic accounting. You can see we got a lot of computer forensic cases, 69 cell phone forensic cases. Really where our money comes out of, I would say the majority, like if you're looking at dollar amount, I would say forensic accounting is where we get a lot of our money, and incident response. So incident response is like breaches of companies. So a company getting breached, getting hacked, and then our computer forensic response team will help shut down all their systems and also find where the incident occurred. And they need that for not only legal reasons, but sometimes to obviously help fix the problem on their end. And that's expensive. We'll send 3-4 people out, you know, hourly rates, and they'll be there a week. So I mean, we get a lot of revenue out of incident response, and we get a lot of revenue out of forensic accounting. So with that, I will open it up to any questions that you guys have. That is my email address if you guys do have any questions after this, but I can open it up right now if you guys have any questions.
Does anyone have questions for Brett? Feel free either to just speak up or you can raise your hand.
I had a question. Cases normally take.
Sorry, I missed that.
Go ahead. Yep.
How long do your cases normally take to finalize?
Good question. So I would say the average case is about 3 months. We've had cases finish in we've pumped them out in 2 weeks, depending on. I have one right now that is going on its 4th year. And that really has to do with the litigation process, someone getting sued, and then us doing our investigation, slowly getting documentation. So sometimes we say, well, we need their bank statements. So then they got to issue a subpoena, get their bank statements. And then we say, oh, we found this, we need to get this from them now. And then they issue a subpoena, get that information. And sometimes they fight back and say, no, we're not going to provide that. Or sometimes they provide the information, but it's redacted and it's like just garbage and we can't really use it. So we have to go back and issue a letter saying that we need to have non-redacted information and here's why. So the judge will sign off on it. And sometimes the just process takes forever. Really the only winners in that case are the attorneys just making tons of money. But that's why they take so long. So yeah, I got a few cases that go 4 or 5. I think we had one that went 6 years. But
how often do you have to testify?
Not very often. I've been lucky, and I say it's because my reports are so rock solid. But the reason I've been lucky, I think, is just because mine are basically facts. I don't tend to stray from the facts. I don't tend to throw out opinions. The second you start throwing out opinions is when the other side will challenge you and they might get another accountant to refute your opinion. And then things will go to a trial and then you'll end up testifying. A lot of times though, mine will settle. So I'll issue a report and they'll settle based on that report because I don't try to sugarcoat anything. You know, I say, here's where the money went, here's where it came from, here's the sources. And then if there's any schemes involved, I kind of lay that out in a way that, you know, hopefully normal people, judges, attorneys, juries can understand. So it's real simple. And then I attach all of the supporting records so there's no dispute of where I got my information. So I've only testified probably 4 times in court. It's not fun getting cross-examined by like other attorneys on your work. They'll find some like period or comma in the wrong spot and they'll just talk to you about it for 5 minutes trying to discredit you. So it's not fun. But and I've actually never been deposed either, which probably everybody in our department has been at least deposed, meaning they've had to sit down for a deposition by another attorney by the opposite side, where they actually question their methodologies and what processes they used and that type of stuff. But I've been able to avoid that as well, usually because things settle. But I'm a lucky one, I'll say that much.
So how do you know if you're a good fit for this field?
Good question. So I would say if you're comfortable in, so I would say I'm actually kind of an introvert, but I'm very comfortable and I have thick skin. So I don't have a problem sitting and talking and having those difficult conversations with people, because you're going into businesses and there's people there that don't like that you're there because you're doing an investigation. So if you're comfortable with that and you're comfortable sitting down and asking people questions, I'm pretty nice about it. I'm just there doing my job, and I don't grill anybody or be try to be rude with anybody. I understand that regardless of who's ever is talking to me is taking time out of their day. I'm not law enforcement. I can't force them to be there. So I definitely respect people for sitting down and talking to me, and I think being able to do that helps. But there's some people that just can't handle that or don't like those situations. So if that's one thing that you don't like, I definitely wouldn't do that. If you don't like writing reports from scratch, that's another thing. All of our reports are literally blank pages because every report's different. Whereas like Audit, they kind of have a general template that they use, and they kind of fill in some of the blanks and maybe have to add in a few things. We literally have a blank page because every situation is different. So writing reports is probably the part that I don't like the most. It's like it takes a long time. I feel like I'm thinking too much, and I feel like I have to. I don't know. I think I overthink things, so then I'll spend 2 hours just trying to write the background section of the report. So I don't know. It's just that's probably the tough part. But to be a good candidate, I would say having that thick skin, not minding being in some of those situations, and liking not knowing what's next. I like the fact that we don't have recurring clients. Audit and tax, they know for the most part what they're going to work on next year, whose clients they have. They have the same clients sometimes for 10 years. And once I'm done with one, I don't see them again for the most part. And so I like kind of having that new client experience all the time. So
How often do you have to travel for your job? Like what's the timeline for that?
it used to be a lot. With the pandemic, it's interesting. I think every business is experiencing this, but you kind of realize we didn't have to be on site for every one of these cases. And when I say a lot, it was probably 20 to 30 days a year. Sounds like a lot. You're like, well, that's like a month. But if you spread it out over 12 months and you say it's like 3 days here, and then maybe I got to go do a couple days the next week, and then maybe I'm off for a month. I don't really go anywhere, and then I'm gone for a week. It really wasn't that bad. I didn't. It sounded bad. I remember at first, when I'd have it, but it's kind of nice to get out of the office. I didn't mind it that much. But now after we've been doing this since March of no travel. Technology is a wonderful thing. I honestly don't think that there's a reason other than the ones that we have to go on site are if there's like paper records and that client just does not have the means to get that to us in a digital format. And we've had a couple of those happen, but usually we're able to tap into our other resources or people in those areas to grab that stuff for us and scan it in and get it to us. So now I think the landscape is changing. I think that the amount of travel will die down, and we won't have to travel 20 to 30 days a year. It'll probably be more like, as far as case related travel, probably more like 10 to 15, probably.
Do you typically see long days in this field?
You know, I would say compare. So I would say if you looked at our total hours compared to like audit and tax, it's probably about the same. And it's just the makeup that's different. So I would say I'd probably average a solid 43 to 45 hours a week. But we don't have that busy season. And when we do get busy, we're pretty good at managing the work and we know how to spread it out. So I think there was one week recently where I had a 60-hour week, and it was just because a client called me on like a Wednesday and said they needed a report by Monday. And it was just, that was bad taste on their part. I mean, it really just made us mad because they didn't give us any time and we all had to pump in a bunch of hours really quick. But barring those circumstances, it's pretty consistent. And we know how to kind of manage that. And again, no busy season means we can kind of work our cases and we can push things out if we tell them like, hey, we can't get to this till next month because we're really busy, and a lot of times they're understanding and we'll prioritize. And so it's nice. It's more like this instead of like this, like you see in audit and tax, where they have those big dives and where there's not much work, and huge ticks of where there's a ton of work.
Any other questions for Brett today? We have just like maybe one more minute. Yeah, Laura.
You mentioned that you have like a lot of like new clients versus audit department that has a lot of, say, regulars. So I'm curious if you approach your work like an auditor does, thinking the trust but verify point of view, or do you go in with an assumption of something happening already?
Yeah, so it depends on the case, but yeah, for the most part, it's we go with what's the word? Just it's a heavy amount of scrutiny. So usually people have found an issue, and we need to find it, and then from there we definitely want to make sure that they are factual. So we won't just trust someone's accounting. We will actually look for the supporting documentation and look into the bank statements to verify that that is what occurred, rather than trust their trial balance or trust their general ledger information. Honestly, we don't really care how things are recorded so much as what's happening in the bank records and where the money's going.
Perfect. Anyone else with the last question? All right. Well, Brett did, like he said, shared his email address. I will send that out in an email too, just so you all have it. But thank you guys for joining today. I hope you guys learned something today. I know I definitely did. But otherwise, I will let you guys get on with your day. So thanks for joining, and thanks so much, Brett, for sharing with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Bye, guys. Have a good day.